That's correct. We need to tell the children about space. At last, he has arrived. Have you completed your mission? No, sir. The mission has just begun. That is excellent. I couldn't help it. I need one more excuse to play. Children, I think I've been cooped up in my house far too long. Let's talk about space. The final frontier in art. Well, hello there. I'm Mr. Hale, and you've arrived to the Visual Art Expeditionary Force. We're so glad you're joining us. We're going to continue our series as we look at drawing, and we're trying to understand the mechanics of art. And what that means is there's an imaginary toolbox in our head. And today we're going to take out the tool that we call space. It's an art element. And space is a really strange but awesome tool. A tool of the mind that we can use when we are exploring the language of drawing. So join me. Let's take a look and try to understand what's going on. Here we go. So children, I'm going back to the sketchbook because there's something really cool in here I want to show you. This is my first pen and ink drawing that I felt really great about. Now, you'll notice something. It's a man riding a motorcycle, or at least what appears to be a man. That is our positive shape. And then the white space around is effective because it's giving you total focus to focus on the figure and the motorcycle. So space is a tool that we use, and sometimes it's not what we draw. Space is what we don't do in an artwork. And it's really important to be aware of that. And it really helps us in positioning our subject matter in a drawing. Another way to look at it would be here. This is a colored image, an acrylic painting. And notice that there's a lot of blue space around the warm color of the bird. And so that really draws your attention so that you really look at the bird and focus on it. And then if you start to look in the background, you realize that that space is pretty much secondary. So space is a creative tool that we use to control how the viewer will look at the artwork. And remember, we're thinking artists. So we want to think before we draw, we want to think when we draw, and we want to think after we draw. Here we are looking at the same paper that we had from our second video. In that video, we talked about the 5 lines of art. That was how we begin a drawing. And then we explained that line went to shape, or line leads to shape, and shape leads to form. And how if we take the lines, we get a flat shape, but if we start thinking 3-dimensionally, we get a form. And then value was how light hits the object, and value then from light to dark gives us more sense of the form. But one thing that we did not point out at this teaching, which we're looking at now, is space. And space is what we don't draw. For example, watch this. If I position one square here and one square here, just like I had done across the page, and I do the connection, I end up with pretty much a cube. However, if I change my spacing, so I use one square here, and I maneuver the other square farther apart, space really changes the final outcome. And that's what we're trying to understand when I say space is what we don't draw. So space is a powerful tool. It can really draw emphasis. Here I did, pretty much position this tiger in the center of my sketchbook. And I found some different pictures on Pinterest, and I then did my own kind of version of this tiger. But I wanted to show you a different artwork in the sketchbook where I drew my children, and I really filled the space. So here we have a really busy composition. It's not that it's right or wrong, okay? It's just different. And space can really change how our final outcome appears when we are working through the language of drawing and we're trying to say something important. Space can really draw emphasis to one idea with great clarity, or it can provide a lot of information that the viewer needs to process. So children, to further illustrate the point that I'm trying to make about space is if we can process it in our mind by just observing from the world around us. And you have a camera or a phone at home or an iPad, you can do this too. I'm using an iPad here. If I'm close to you, I appear bigger. Let's pretend this is a drawing, a sheet of paper. So I appear bigger. However, if you frame me up and position, there's that word again, position me more in the middle ground, I'm smaller now. If I go back even farther into the background, well, now I appear much more smaller than I did when I first started this clip. So as I progress through this space, I appear larger. It's important for us as artists to think this way before we even start to draw. And if we start to do that, we will draw more three-dimensional. So I'm going to use this guy behind me here to explain a few more things about how you can use your camera to help you in the drawing process. So for us to even understand space more, we can use the technology at our house, like a camera or an iPad, and we can move that camera around a toy or an action figure or an item that we want to draw, and we can change the camera angle by framing up the shot in different ways. And that's what I'm trying to show you here by moving the camera around. So space is what we don't draw, but it is a very effective tool. And we can do a lot with space before we even make a mark on our paper. And using your technology at home is a great way to help you get your composition started. So before we conclude this video, I wanted to share two more examples of fourth grade students from my class. The first one fits our spaceship theme, and just process this for a minute. This is a fourth grader. This is amazing. So we've got a spaceship that's very much three-dimensional from a toy still life drawing, and then he looked at some Star Wars concept art to create the background. Phenomenal job of conceptualizing and then piecing together the different information from different sources to get to this final outcome. Wonderful job. Then we have a girl who did a wonderful drawing here of an interior design project where we use one-point perspective. And this is a great example of illustrating what I was explaining before in the video. Where we move through space and we have a sense of foreground, middle ground, and background. So I hope this really helps you understand space more. I'm Commander Hale, signing off for now. Look forward to seeing you next time. Remember, we always want to think when we draw, before we draw, and after we draw. Take care of yourselves. Look forward to seeing you again real soon. Bye-bye.